This is the carbon catabolism pathway, and it begins with glycolysis, which is where glucose is broken down into pyruvic acid. Glucose has 6 carbons and pyruvic acid has 3 carbons. So one glucose breaks down into 2 pyruvic acids. During the breakdown of glucose, energy is released and it creates ATP. This is when glucose is breaking its bonds, and then in this step NADH is also receiving electrons. There are 2 different pathways that pyruvic acid can go through after glycolysis. This could either be fermentation or transition step. In transition step, pyruvic acid is broken down into acetyl-coenzyme A and carbon dioxide. Acetyl-coenzyme A has 2 carbons and carbon dioxide obviously has 1. The NADH is formed when it was receiving electrons. So carbon dioxide is released, and the acetyl coenzyme is broken down even further into more carbon dioxide in the Krebs cycle, which is step 3. In step 3, which is the Krebs cycle. And during this step, carbon dioxide is releasing all its bits of energy, and NADH and FADH2 plus ATP are formed during this process. And all together, they go to the electron transport chain, which is step 4. So glycolysis, transition step, the Krebs cycle, they all go to the electron transport. So the NADH in this here in the glycolysis, and the NADH in the transition, and here in the Krebs cycle, the NADH and the FADH2 serve as electron carriers. So as I mentioned earlier, all 3 steps, glycolysis, transition step, and the Krebs cycle, will be brought to an electron transport system that is embedded in a membrane, and the electron carriers will deliver those electrons as a source of energy, creating a proton motor force and ATP. So these electron carriers, which in this case are NADH and FADH2, are sort of like taxis that move the electrons, and they allow oxygen to be reduced into water. And in this process, very large amounts of ATP is produced, as you can see here. The oxygen is reduced to water, and ATP is created, a very large amount. Compared to the other steps, this is the most ATP that was created out of all the other steps.